Hi, welcome back to another video lecture. Today we're talking about the American cowboy. And it's important to understand that the American cowboy, that is John Wayne, and that is the Hollywood version, especially from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, is largely what plays into that myth of the American West versus a little more real version of the cowboy, which is more of a low-class seasonal worker who lives very much a low-class seasonal worker life and less of a, rugged individualistic pursuit of freedom and justice that we see in the movies. All right, let's get started. So it's important to understand first that the tradition of the cowboy, though it is as we would an American tradition, actually begins not with the United States Americans, but instead with the Spanish and the Hispanic community in Mexico. So from 1600 to 1849, it was a long time span we're going to cover here in about 5 seconds, but the Spanish end up introducing the longhorn to North America. And the longhorn is able to survive in the harsh climates of Texas and Oklahoma. Okay. And ranching becomes like one of the primary businesses of the Californias in this time period. Okay. And in fact, we get the word ranch from the Spanish word rancho. So a couple other words that we get there too, like lasso. All right. Anyway, so they use these open ranching techniques. They don't have fences, right? They just have open grazing. Okay. And they employ cowboys, vaqueros, right? That's where we get a lot of those terms from. Okay. Now, once the Hispanics are displaced after the Mexican-American War in 1848, we have a bunch of, economic changes in the American Southwest, and a lot of these ranchers end up becoming workers in Texas ranches, and if not, become industrial laborers in the mines in the American Southwest. All right, so that's 1600 to 1849. Okay, it's important to put that up there because we assume that the cowboys are this American invention and this American way of life when really culture is shared. All right, so in the late 1800s, we have a boom in the cattle market. And this is largely a boom due to a supply constraint. Okay, and that supply constraint happens because of the Civil War. So when the Civil War happens, we're slaughtering a lot of cattle, feeding a lot of soldiers. Okay, the farmers on the East Coast aren't conducting business as normal, which creates less supply. So increased demand plus the war happening, creating less output, right? So we have increased demand, lower supply. That's going to mean that our prices are going to go through the roof. And even if demand doesn't go up, prices are going to go really high. So what you get is in one area of the country, there's plenty of cattle. And so the supply is high, the demand stagnant, price is low. But if you can get your cattle to the East Coast, you can sell it for a lot higher prices. So you don't want to sell on the Texas market, you need to sell on an Eastern Coast market. So what we have is the need to move our cattle to the railroads up north, sell it for a higher price, make a lot of money in the process. All right, now these Texas ranchers were using open ranges. These are large area of government-owned land where the cattle would graze without restrictions. Okay, the open range leads to some modern conflicts. Okay, like a group of people up in the American Northwest about a couple years ago, who took over some public land because they were taking away their grazing rights, and it led to a little standoff there. Right, so this kind of still plays out in our modern world. Anyway, so then they would go on this long drive to sell their cattle for a higher price, right, to those railroads up in the north. All right, and we got some words from that, like a Maverick, like the Dallas Mavericks team, becomes known for like an unbranded longhorn, right? We get some slang terms and that kind of stuff. And then you get the invention of refrigerated rail cars, which also helps we can cut the meat and then transport it and keep it fresh. That's going to help boom that market a little bit. But like all things, what goes up must come down, and we have the bust of the Eastern cattle market, or the cattle market for the longhorns. There's more increased competition after the Civil War. Farmers get back on their feet. We have a lot of investments become saturating the market. So as people see people getting rich off cattle farming, other people follow, just like a gold rush. And so you have all this money coming in and we saturate the market. And then when we have an increase in supply and the demand stays the same, you're going to see a decrease in price. But the people who got in too late, who got in at the higher price, but now can't sell at that higher price, they're going to lose money and the market busts. Okay. And now there's a couple of things that hurt while this is happening. We have a harsh winter in 86 and 87. So a lot of these farmers who are already underwater, these ranchers are already underwater, lose a lot of cattle and they're shuttering their doors. And we have the invention of barbed wire, which ends the open range. Because now we have people claiming land, especially in the territory of Oklahoma. We have people claiming land, putting up a barbed wire fence, and you can't graze your cattle there, right? And so this is going to effectively end that ranching technique that was being used, that plus the supply recovering and more railroads coming, so we don't need a long drive anymore, basically ends the age of the American cowboy. We still have ranch hands and that kind of stuff, but really what we're doing here is we're contrasting the idea of the cowboy as this rugged, individualistic pursuit of justice figure and giving it a little more real. Okay, it's very much connected to the national supply chain. It's very much a big business, and your cowboy is your typical low-wage worker. They are often illiterate. They might be former soldiers who need a new job. They might be freedmen who are looking for wages that they can earn. They are former vaqueros moving to the east. There's a lot of work at play, and so the cowboy is not always your typical like white rugged individualistic male. Instead, it's a much more diverse job, which typically is what a low wage worker would make and live like in the West. And so we have that myth versus a little more reality. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.